Hey guys, it's Pineapple, and the scariest thing about Shigaraki having this quirk is it would potentially break the limitations of the quirk as we know it. Star and Stripe is limited by having to use a super strength rule on herself at all times, leaving her with only one rule to use reactively in combat. On top of that, there's a ratio between how much power she can call on with the quirk and how much life force she has, like we explained in the last video, meaning that the range of the area that she can affect isn't unlimited. But if Shigaraki got his hands on the quirk, one, he wouldn't need to use a rule to make himself super strong, since we know that due to his body modifications, even without the use of any of his quirks, Shigaraki is comparable to All Might in strength and durability. But the second factor here that kind of changes everything is Shigaraki's regeneration. Star and Stripe's life force has a limit, because eventually it can burn out, like when someone runs out of chakra in Naruto, to the point where they die. But with Shigaraki, would he have an infinite resource of life force? Would he be able to massively increase the range of the effects that he could create? It's a scary thought. Beyond those, another reason to worry is the fact that All For One users can combine quirks. So what would Shigaraki be able to combine with the rule-making properties of her quirk, and what sort of combinations could come about? Let's discuss and also talk about how Shigaraki can use the quirk in an entirely different way from Star and Stripe besides the one use that we've seen in this upcoming chapter, starting with the first crazy way that Shigaraki could use New Order. Star and Stripe has to have a rule on herself for strength, but in chapter 331, it seems like we actually see her drop her strength rule for a moment because her atmospheric double grabs onto the lasers as she did earlier when she created the I can hold lasers rule. If she didn't drop the strength rule, then I think the other interesting implication is that her air double is able to create its own rules. But regardless, that was the first time that we saw the combination of two rules being used together, and it took the fight to an entirely new level. Shigaraki not needing to use the strength rule can absolutely make use of this, and that would create some really insane effects like we see Star do in this chapter. The first rule combo I think he could try that would be effective is I can fire lasers and my lasers contain my decay. Over the course of Shigaraki's fight with Star and Stripe, we've seen lasers used as an attempt to damage Shigaraki from range, and if he didn't have his regeneration, he would have been turned into paste by now, honestly. But I think Shigaraki does tend to learn quite a bit from all of his opponents, and I feel like he'll see how dominating lasers can be when used in interesting ways, so he might take note of that, and instead of trying to do something overly complicated like make a giant sword of light or something like that, I just see him making it so his lasers can spread his decay, so that when he shoots a laser out of his hand and he has his decay activated, instead of making contact with someone and frying their skin and body with the energy of a laser, something that I'm sure someone like Endeavor could survive, instead what you would get is a really frightening disintegration ray. And any D&D fans here, which please, by the way, let me know if you are in the comment section below, and what class you played last. I need more D&D friends. I'm a bard, by the way. But any of you know that a disintegration ray can be a terrifying thing. Imagine Shigaraki just firing a beam at someone and watching them turn to dust. Imagine watching Shigaraki just let loose 100 beams of light and raining them down on people, or just shooting one at somebody and watching them decay from the inside. It would be horrifying and turn the danger up to 11 for everyone involved. Because while Shigaraki has an easy defense for light-based attacks, the students and the heroes really don't. And outside of Toru, who can bend and refract light and might really be useful in the final battle if she's not the traitor along with Aoyama, by the way, check that video out, there's no one that might be able to react to this or do anything about it. Plus, if Toru does decide to catch one of these somehow or try to send it away from her friends, then the decay would just spread to her, unless she doesn't really have to make contact with the light itself to interact with it. It's scary. And you can see how right off the bat this list is completely different than the Star video, where number one for her was I can go fast, which again is why Shigaraki cannot be allowed to have this quirk. Number two, keeping up with the theme of Shigaraki being able to use two rules, let's get a little weird. I can touch time, and time stops in a range of 100 meters in front of me, or time stops for Izuka Midoriya, or, whoever he's fighting. We've seen one limitation on Star's quirk is that she has to be able to touch the thing that she applies her rule to. This makes certain feats kind of difficult because actually, how would you touch something like gravity, right? It's kind of happening more than something you can touch. With time, it is sort of similar, but with the ability to use both rules, maybe Shigaraki can creatively get around this. Saying I can touch time wouldn't suddenly make Shigaraki Dio Brando or anything. It would just mean that when he waves his hands around through the air, that he's also now physically touching space-time. Which, I mean, again, I guess technically you always are. And from there, with the ability to actually touch and interact with time, which I mean, let's not even get to how dangerous that is, because being able to touch it would imply that he could use Decay on it. And that just gets to a whole different JoJo King Crimson place that I can't imagine. But again, with the ability to touch time, I feel like Shigaraki could have some limited, like extremely limited, control over time. Like he wouldn't be stopping time for everyone on Earth or anything like that, but I think he could make time stop for one specific person he touches and knows the name of, like time stops for Izuka Midoriya after punching him maybe. I don't see it as completely out of the question at least, or doing something like time stops in a range of 50 meters in front of me. But then that gets tricky, because would his ability to touch time allow him to move inside of stop time? Or would it be more effective to just say that all of someone's movements are in reverse, right? So effectively, it's like time is going in reverse for them. They're not getting any younger or anything, but it's like they have to do everything they did backwards or something like that. Honestly, there's probably a reason that there are no time-related quirks in My Hero Academia, and the closest we have is someone who can rewind your body biologically in various ways, more like sending time through you than sending you through time. Regardless, though, it's clear to see how this one would be a problem if it's somehow possible. Number 3, I can decay the air, and decay spreads through the air for 100 meters. This would effectively make the air in an area lethal to the point where even touching it would start to decay a hero. This one has the potential for some truly awesome parallels to Avengers Infinity War, of course, because imagine the unsuspecting group of heroes that just wanders into an area and suddenly, with no sort of visual aid to tell them what happened, with no sort of warning or anything, someone starts decaying away. It's one thing to be going after Shigaraki and being aware that at any point, if he gets close to you, you might become dust. But imagine a situation where a group of, let's say, 10 or 20 heroes walks into an area where they expect Shigaraki to be, and instead of finding him, they find absolutely nothing, and think, alright, well, I guess, maybe we got bad intel or something, let's go home. And then, poof. You have one start crumbling away, and then another, and then another. And just imagine the horror of the heroes that are watching this happen as there's no Shigaraki in sight. What do? Do you just scream and wait for your turn? It's just horrific. And it's absolutely something I could see Shigaraki doing, because I see him using this quirk in a really childish way that matches his gamer attitude, and creating rules that sort of feel like abilities in a game. So this would kind of be like a cloud kill spell, or something to a similar effect. And it's awesome. Number 4, I am Tengo Shimura, and Tengo Shimura controls himself. Remembering Nana's words to never forget, I think this could be Shigaraki, or really Tengo Shimura's, last hope for breaking free of All For One on his own. The key here is he has to really view himself as Tengo Shimura for this to work, I think, but think about the implications of that. After all this time, he's still using the name that All For One gave him while trying to deny him. Tengo is having an identity crisis between whether or not he's Shigaraki or All For One, but we know that Shigaraki is All For One's last name, so ironically, Tengo is conflicted over which version of All For One he is, the one that was born hundreds of years ago, or the one that was born when Tengo was found under that bridge. The truth is, he's neither. He's Tengo Shimura, the boy who wanted to become a hero and was told by the other children that he was like All Might. The boy that believed he could truly become a hero one day after seeing that picture of his grandma that changed his life in an instant and gave him the hope that he'd been begging for from someone in his house for his entire life. Side note, please check out my What If Tengo Shimura video from yesterday, where I tell the story of what if Tengo Shimura was saved by Shirakumo instead of All For One. But yes, I am Tengo Shimura, or maybe even better, I am myself, coming from the heart and coming from the last piece of Tengo that surely is still in there, alongside maybe Tengo Shimura controls himself, would probably be something that I know a lot of people in the fandom would go berserk to see. Since there are so many people dying to see Shigaraki regain control of himself before the final battle, and doing it in this way while still retaining all of the benefits that All For One gave him, with a newfound rage and power inside him, makes this a method that I definitely think Shigaraki should absolutely try at least. And finally, number 5, Izuka Midoriya gives me One For All, or I can steal One For All. Finally, the one that we all know must happen. I mean, the one that's likely the entire reason that this quirk is on All For One's radar in the first place. This would seal the deal. We know that Shigaraki's hatred is a factor in his ability to use All For One to steal One For All, but making the rule I can steal One For All from Izuka Midoriya, or maybe even Izuka Midoriya must give me One For All or his heart would stop, I think, unless Deku really is as crazy as we think he is, might work. On top of this, remember that Shigaraki can actually stack quirks together and combine their effects, so there might be a more direct way that he or All For One could combine New Order with All For One itself to get the job done and steal One For All away from Deku for good. All For One seems to really want Shigaraki to be the one to steal One For All, but what happens after? You'd think that he'd want all that power for himself, but he's happy to give it to someone else. I mean, technically he's giving it to himself, but I feel like there's a deeper purpose to him trying to have Shigaraki be the holder of One For All, beyond the fact that Shigaraki looks just like his brother, and with Shigaraki by his side, he can finally live out his dream of ruling the world with his brother by his side inside the body of Shigaraki from within One For All. But as badly as All For One thinks that he wants Shigaraki to have One For All, I have a theory that One For All and Shigaraki's All For One being united would actually be a bad thing for All For One, because the vestiges of both quirks would interact. If you recall, during the war arc when All For One and Shigaraki tried to steal One For All, Nana and the first user showed up to stop it. But now we've seen the other users of One For All step forward. If both of the quirks were in the same user, would we see a fight between the different past heroes of One For All and All For One within this weird sort of quirk spirit dimension that they exist in? And bonus, if that did happen, would we see various flashbacks to the actual fights that these different heroes had against All For One when they were alive, including All Might, because that could be a really good way for us to see the original All Might versus All For One battle that has only been talked about and we've never seen. But let's consider this does happen and all the vestiges fight the vestige of All For One inside of Shigaraki. What would happen if they somehow won? Like if they beat him? Would Shigaraki be free from All For One's control? I think the most interesting thing is, if Shigaraki does get One For All, inside of him will not only be the various vestiges that we've already seen, but there should be a flame-like vestige of Deku, just like All Might's vestige, which is there only partially due to the fact that he's still alive. So could we see Shigaraki stealing One For All with New Order, only to witness Vestige Deku alongside the other vestiges trying to take down All For One from within Shigaraki, and maybe that's how they help Deku save Shigaraki? Who knows? I think it'd be really beautiful because that means Deku technically saves Shigaraki while quirkless, but the effects of what he did while he held the quirk have resounding impacts and implications that then go on to save Shigaraki in a very direct way. Which, I mean, just goes back to what I was saying in a previous video about Deku being able to prove that anyone can be a hero. These chapters make it really hard to believe that Class A is going to be able to be much of a help against Shigaraki, but perhaps if he was on their side against All For One, maybe. I don't know. I still want Shigaraki to be the final villain, so I guess that doesn't work too much for me. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You seem to respond really well to the last one about Star and Stripe's quirk and the ways that she could use it. And depending on how you respond to this one, I might even have one more video idea regarding one other character and how they could use this quirk. It's All For One. You know, it's All For One. So please get this video to 1,000 likes, and I'll go on and get that out for you all. Also, My Hero Academia World Heroes Mission is out now in theaters, and I'm really excited to go see that soon. So I hope that if you did, you stay safe, or if that you are, you do the same, and let me know on Twitter at VocalPineapples how you felt about the movie. I'd love to hear it, and maybe I'll compile them into an MHA fan reactions video to show how people felt about the movie, or I'll include it in my review whenever I do end up going to see it. My Twitter link is in my description. Of course, subscribe and hit that bell icon if I kept you interested, and that's all. It's Pineapple. I love you guys. Peace.